Okay, thank you Keith for the introduction, and thanks to Peter Collins for inviting me to speak today. Peter asked me to talk a bit about innovation in the grains industry, and normally I associate that with talks about PA and variable rate technology for the inputs. I have a bit of a different take on it, and that sort of reflects my focus on extracting the synergies between the interaction between livestock and cropping in our mixed farming system. So I'm going to give a bit of a background about my business and describe some of the drivers within our business for the need to innovate, and then talk a bit about the grazing of the crops and how that has really boosted the profitability of our business. And I guess that's my real message today, is to highlight the financial implications to any business of a step change in technology. And it really alarms me when you look at the productivity gains within the grains industry now at 0.2%, and for mixed farms having a decrease in productivity. It's quite surprising, and I guess I like everyone to sort of see that there is some really positive stories out of there rather than focusing on the negatives. And when you get it right, agriculture is a very profitable business to be involved in. Now, we're farming east of Esperance and quite close to the coast. As you can see from the picture, we sort of vary from 2 kilometres off the beach to probably 35, and I guess the average rainfall is about 500 mils through the middle of the farm, but it sort of changes by an inch or two each side of that. Our business is a family-owned business that was started in 1969 when my father got the allocation of a CP block. It was 1,200 hectares of bush, and I guess it was a wool operation predominantly. There was very little grain production. I would say 85% of our income used to come from wool. I came home to the business after finishing Muresk in 1996, and at that stage wool was very depressed. It was sort of at the start of the no-till revolution for the grains industry, and I was given a free rein in our business to develop the cropping rotation. And as we got better at growing grain and it became more profitable, our business has been able to grow on the back of it. But I guess the whole of my farming life, innovation and improvement has been a key factor of what we do. I farm with 2 brothers. It's a big family to be in one business, and more importantly, 3 sisters-in-law working together. And I think it's really important to get the family dynamics right and the business structures right to enable everyone to work together. I've said it before, but you can't sack your sister-in-law, so you have to get the dynamics working well in that family environment. And the benefits of getting it right are phenomenal. You can achieve a lot more together than you can separated. Within our business, I take responsibility for the grain production, and my brother Simon looks after the livestock side of the business. And I was thinking about what Peter said about the mixed farming and the productivity. I reckon that's probably one of the key factors, that it's hard to be good at the stock side and the cropping side at the same time if you're the sole person responsible. I think we always have been improving our productivity, and a lot of that has been about incremental gains and trying not to make the same mistakes twice. So it's a continuous improvement process. But you know, since I started farming, land values in our area have gone through the roof. And we bought the next door neighbour farm in 1995 for $190 an acre, and last year we settled on the neighbouring farm for $1,500 an acre. And so that graph is just plots the years that we bought land and the values that we paid for them. And you know, that's a representation of the Esperance area, which used to be good value for money, and now you have to be doing things well to justify investing in more land. I have a belief that you've got to earn the right to grow, and one of the key things we did as a family business was sit down and put a strategic plan together. And that was important for many reasons, especially giving all the stakeholders buy-in and ownership of where we want to go. But the outcome of that strategic plan was a pretty aggressive expansion plan to enable us to set up 3 separate business units. So we had this sort of desire to expand the operation, but you've got to earn the right to grow. So we really needed to get some improvement in our productivity. I suppose the other side, you can't really change the soil types you've got, and you can't change the weather, so it really comes back to the people and the decisions they make that influences the outcome that you're going to get. Essentially, I believe that in our grain business, all the easy things had been implemented to increase our productivity. But the livestock side of our business offered some huge opportunities. And so in 2007, me and my brother Simon did a Grow Profit workshop run by CSBP, and the catalyst of doing that workshop was a real focus for us to improve the performance of our livestock business, and that largely had to come from stocking rate. And the way we view our pasture phase is it's the legume component of our cropping rotation. I mean, currently the cropping brings in about 75% of the income and uses about, probably 65% of the area. But having a better performance from that pasture phase and better financial performance from it really helps to drive the business, because it gives you all sectors of your farming rotation are very profitable. So for us, that focus to increase stocking rates is really it's a whole farm approach. You've got to get the basics right first. So we're relying on catching water in dams for livestock. You've got to get good water. You've got to have good backup feed supplies. So for us, that was pit silage. You've got to have good quality pastures, because that's the engine room of your pasture, of your livestock enterprise. It's having good quality pastures, because that's the cheapest form of energy. You've got to have good basic animal husbandry in place, practices in place, and for us, introducing a grazing of crops was the catalyst to enable us to really crank up some production. The whole aim about grazing crops is to take the pressure off our pastures through the winter period. It enables us to get a wedge of feed up, so that when we get to August and we're loading the pastures back up, they can handle a much higher stocking rate. And you set your business up for what you can handle in the spring with your stocking rate, rather than what you can handle in the winter. You've got to get some fundamentals right. So you need to have a very good rotation, because you can't handle grass weeds in cereals if you're going to graze the crop. So, we have a rotation of 1 year of pasture, which is sub-clover base, then canola, and then wheat. And in that pasture phase, we look after it well. It's well fertilised. We manipulate the broadleaf weeds out, make sure there's no redlegs around, and then at the end we'll spray top with gramoxone to essentially eliminate any seed set of grass weeds. Our aim, sort of as it's evolved, we've learnt a lot about how to graze the crops, and to be honest, the hardest thing that we ever did was first turn in a mob of sheep to a nice looking wheat crop. But as we've sort of got more confident, and we've built grazing into our system to the point now where we can't finish seeding until we've got animals on the first crops that were sown. And we aim now to graze almost all of our canola and wheat. Probably last year we grazed 75 to 80% of our canola paddocks and probably 85% of our cereals. We aim to take off about 250 kilos of dry matter as an average. We only graze each paddock once. I mean, we have mucked around doing multiple grazings, and that just exposes you to getting a bad result at the end. I think you're just taking too much biomass out of the system. Our stocking rate, we usually mix sheep and cattle together if you need to, but we'll try to target about 30 to 50 DSE per hectare. And there's some clear rules that you have to follow. With cereals, you've got to be out by growth stage ZADC 30. After Z30, a cereal plant is putting up productive leaves, the F-3, F-2. If you eat productive leaves, you're going to impact on yield. If you're just eating the leaves that are at the bottom of the plant, which are often dead when it comes to head emergence, it's almost like a free lunch. It shouldn't have any impact on yield, and that's certainly been our experience in by far the large majority of cases. Canola's a little different. We're not quite sure about the rules for growth stage, but we feel it's probably more important to have a date in mind so that you've got time at the end of the season to complete the flowering and grain fill process. And so for us, we sort of graze up until the start of August. But the beauty about grazing is it enables you to take advantage of early sowing opportunities. So we'll now put canola in from early in April, and we can graze it to hold it back and stop. You know, in our sort of high fertile situations, we'll have canola growing over 6 foot high, and it starts to lodge, and you just don't get the yield. You've grown too much biomass in relation to the yield you should be growing, and you know, we often see yield increases from grazing canola that's sown early in high fertile situations because you just end up with a much shorter crop that's all pod. So it's easier to harvest and it gives a higher yield. That's not what you're trying to achieve as a norm, but as often as you get a negative response from grazing, you're likely to get a positive response. In our business, since we've built grazing into being a key part of the crop rotation and had a much higher stocking rate, we've had some seriously consistent profitability improvements. We try and look at the whole farm rather than individual paddocks. And overall, the business is much more intensive. Because what's happened is we've been able to increase our stocking rate by 25%, which in its own right is reflected in a 25% increase in profitability. But in practice, what has happened is we've been able to put 16% more of the farm into crop and keep the same size of our livestock operation. And so last year, that extra 16% crop delivered another $1 million in EBIT. And when you consider that this sort of improvement's happening year on year, that's really driving the profitability in our business and giving us the capacity to keep expanding. There's also massive benefits to the management that you can put around your livestock operation. You know, we are now guaranteed of quality feed through June and July, and then we also back that up with quality feed in August and September by sowing probably 10% of our pasture area down to an improved tetraploid ryegrass and oats mix. So the effect that has is we're guaranteed high growth rates for 4 months leading up to selling grass-finished steers and grass-finished lamb to Woolworths. And we're now consistently the first business in the state to supply grass-finished steers to Woolworths, and we're getting a really solid market premium on the back of it. And what it's meant is we've lifted our EBIT per hectare on our pasture phase up to $350 a hectare over the last couple of years. And if you compare that to my profitability if I grew a grain legume such as field peas or lupins, it's you know, I think most farmers are almost looking at trying to not lose money growing a grain legume in Western Australia. And so to have a really profitable legume component in your rotation is very good for your business. And then that drives a very sustainable low-cost cropping phase because you've had all the benefits of a good rotation with weed control and nitrogen. So you're much lower in your cost base in the cropping phase, where the neighbours who have got rid of all the fences and all the sheep have gone. It's just a canola wheat rotation, and inherently in time that gets more and more expensive as weed control gets more difficult and costly, and the fertiliser requirements go through the roof. I guess just another indication of innovation in our area is because we were growing quality feed through the winter, we've been moving into some of our, what I would call our long-term pasture country that was really difficult to crop. It's really flat grey clay, You know, the fall on this country is less than 0.1%, so 1 metre in a K. And in a typical winter, it would just sit water on the surface, and you know, you just about couldn't drive your ute across the paddock. So we've been going through and putting, you know, we've contour mapped it to within a couple of centimetres, and going in and putting scraper drains through, laser cut drains through every 132 metres. And then you know the water can, if it's going to sit on the surface, it's going to run into a drain pretty quickly. And then combined with 4 tonnes of gypsum per hectare, so we're opening up the soil structure. We're turning stuff that's never been cropped into our best cropping country, and it's country that's really fertile. The organic carbon's sitting at 3.5%, so we can go in with a pretty low fertiliser regime for the first few crops and get, you know, they're our best performing crops. It's our highest gross margin country if you amortise the cost of putting those drains in over a few years. I guess I just wanted to put this chart up to just show what's happened in our business over the last 10 years. I mean, we've been having a return of capital of 13% for the last 3 years. And you can see from about 2007, 2008 onwards, where we've had that real lift up in grain production over area, and that was the introduction in our business of grazing crops and our ability to put more crop in the ground and grow more tonnes. And this is a piece of technology which has had as bigger impact to our business as the introduction of no-till. It's one of the best returns on investment we've had for any bit of technology we've taken up. And it takes a little bit of management to put it all together, a little bit of, it's not a simple process, but the returns are massive. And, you know, I just don't think we could achieve the goals that we've sort of planned to achieve in our farming careers without being able to grab hold of this sort of technology. And it really, to my mind, if you can get hold of some technology and capitalise on that and be an early mover in the marketplace to expand your business, then there's a lot of wealth to be created from it. And I guess it just comes back, to my mind, it's the capacity of the people running the farm businesses that determines the outcome. And you need experience, and you need to have a reasonable education, I suppose. They're important, but you also need to get off the farm and go and have a look at new ideas and new concepts, and then adapt them back into your own business. And to me, that's where Nuffield was so important for me. And I was only 25 when I did my Nuffield Scholarship, and it set me in the right direction from a very young age to help develop, you know, our business, which has been growing very strongly for at least a decade, and it's an exciting and rewarding business to be involved in.